like Alan Watts says, we can point at a whirlpool and give it a name, but it is never the same whirlpool every single day. And that is like us. We are like whirlpools. We seem to appear the same because we're a similar shape, but we're constantly fluctuating and moving and changing. But instead, we have this concept of ourselves as though we're fixed, and we're not.
Hey everyone, Irene here. So, if you're used to my interviews and long form talks, you are going to see this is a very long talk, over 2 hours long. This is not typical. The guest I have on today is a colleague, a somatic experiencing colleague. Will Rezin is his name. All of his information is somewhere below here on this YouTube video. We met not too long ago and we've been texting and conversing back and forth, and we have very similar views around the new traumatology work, somatics. We have similar frustrations. We also see similar things, and we are passionate about this work and want to see this work survive at a deep level. We talk about this and a lot more in this conversation. We were not sure if we would post this online for folks to watch, but we recorded our conversation, and at the end we were like, let's share it. So enjoy. And of course, we would love to hear your comments, questions, and insights after taking in our full talk. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the conversation. So I've got a story. So found you through Joel and Yerasimos. Listened, was like, cool. And as we've said, you've said to me, there's like something is like soul. There's like a soul, I think, kinship.
Yeah.
Who knows what you and I were doing in another lifetime.
Hopefully
Magic.
more of the same. Probably some
Alchemy,
magic, alchemy, yes.
or maybe we were doing the opposite and we're here to fix that. Hard to know.
Entirely plausible.
But I recently saw Yerasimos. Him and his lovely wife, Sophie, were visiting us. And I said, hey, how did you meet Will originally? And then he told me a story. Do you know that story?
I know my part of the story.
Okay.
I remember the event where we were,
That's
and
what I was thinking of.
I can tell the story, and I
Yeah,
can listen to you tell your version of the story if you'd like to.
sure. You tell the story first.
In gosh, I think it was 2019. Before I moved to Austin, I was invited to an event in Vegas, and it was a really big coaching event. And they used the tactic of I'm gonna give you a free ticket to this event to fill seats. So they had a core group of people who paid, and then whoever paid had 5 tickets they could give away. And so somebody gave me 2 tickets. I gave one to a friend. I said, sure, I'll come in for this event. And it was traditional coaching workshop, Tony Robbins like.
Yeah.
There was going to be a pitch, and everything was just this long arc headed towards the pitch on the last day, building momentum, kind of like you do with a webinar. And repeatedly, I watched the people on stage use tactics that I disagreed with, and then really didn't have the training or the sensitivity to notice the impact of what they were doing on the people they were doing it with or to. I watched a man just have a little tantrum. He's a very well-known man. If I said his name, people, if anybody's listening, would know. You would know who it is.
Yeah.
But I will reserve that.
Shall remain
Shall
nameless.
remain nameless. He had a little temper tantrum on stage because not enough people were signing up.
Oh, he was the presenter.
He was a presenter.
Oh, I
Through the
thought this was.
microphone, yelled at the group, and a bunch of the women had trauma reactions, trauma responses.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And additionally, somebody came up to the mic to ask questions, as they do at these things, and this woman started having, I don't think I'd call it a seizure, but it definitely was similar. There was a lot of body trembling and shaking. She dissociated, she fell over, and she started shaking on the ground. No one knew what to do. It was bizarre. I was the only person that had, like, I don't know. And I don't mean to be grandiose here. It was
Oh,
just that
please.
no one else had an instinct to walk over and do anything.
Yeah.
Then people started congregating around her and trying to hold her body. And I went over and I said, guys, no, everybody back up, leave her alone. And I just did a basic orienting
Yeah.
exercise with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to my voice, feel the floor beneath you. Just really basic um, orienting. And, within 5 minutes, she'd come back. She'd had an experience. I supported her a little bit. And afterwards, I told the team, I'm like, guys, you need support. You need to learn about trauma. You need to learn how to be trauma informed. I mean, like, I could come in and train you. I'd be happy to, but you need
Mm-hmm.
support. And the leader
Yeah.
just doesn't
No.
believe trauma exists. Just thinks it's silly.
Wow.
So that actually happened before the presenter had his moment. And when he had that moment,
Mm.
that's when I met Sophie and Yerasimos. Well, we'd been kind of meeting and talking, but I ended up needing to support some people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just glad I was there and was able to do what I was able to do. Because the women just didn't feel safe, which
No.
is understandable.
No. Yeah. Yeah. How many people were in that auditorium, roughly?
Uh,
Like,
two or 300, something like
yeah,
that, somewhere around there.
good chunk.
Yeah, a good number. A good number.
I haven't, so I know what those feel like because when I was learning how to do business back in 2011, 2012, I went to a lot of those.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm glad I went and I did learn, but I was often the odd one out and sort of was alone, and that's fine. I wasn't I wasn't the girl wearing high heels and had nails done, and every other woman there was with, so
I know the environment you're talking about.
I wear Birkenstocks unless it's raining. I mean, it's just how it is. But I was so I'll go back to what you were saying. That's pretty much what Yerasimos said to me. Of course, his energy is different than yours, so he exclaims a bit more. But yeah, I had heard you guys were at this event. It was Vegas. It was big, and someone had a pretty serious reaction, and no one knew what to do.
Yeah. I was furious afterwards. I mean,
I,
I'm being extremely kind to these people
yeah.
because I think that I don't believe it's because of their fault, any fault of their own, other than not being educated and being ignorant.
Yeah.
And ignorance is not something that's malicious,
No.
but unfortunately, it does end up turning into things that are just awful for people. And that had an echo in a number of different people who I stayed connected with over the next year or two and supported a little bit.
Clearly, I mean, here we are
Yeah.
because of that story.
Both Erasmus and Sophie, I fell in love with them instantly.
Yeah.
We had an instant connection.
They're good eggs. Yeah, Sophie is a student of mine, and then, also SC. I mean, they're both SCPs, so we're in the same lineage. What you shared with me reminds me of just recently, my husband and I, Seth, some people know who he is. We were at an alpine kind of lodge, very rustic, nothing. It wasn't the Four Seasons, let's say that. And, but, you take like a truck up 2 hours to get to this gorgeous area. It's called Cathedral Lakes. Shout out to them and their establishment here in BC. And they have one service where you have these beautiful Japanese soaker tubs made out of cedar, like really deep, and you can fit two people in them. And everything up there is heated from firewood,
Yeah.
and the water is from the lake. And so we would always use these tubs at the end of the day after hiking, and very few people did. The cabins housing like 30 people, and often there'd just be another couple at night up there. So we were up there on our third night, and this couple came in, a little older than us, and the tub was too hot because they don't have their water mechanisms. There's a point to this story. And it took us about 10 minutes to get the water good because it was scalding. So you had to drain, add cold, wait for the pressure to mount, because it's like 50 feet from the lake, all these things. So this couple were like, oof, that's too hot. And so we said, hey, this is what you have to do. And they weren't afraid of us, but they're like, oh, these strangers are talking to us, telling us what to do with our tub.
Yep.
And so they waited, but you could tell the guy was a little impatient. And so they got in when it was probably a little too hot. And my back was to them. And after about 10 minutes, I heard the woman get out, and then I hear this, oh, are you okay? And I went, oh no, I know exactly what's about to happen. And I just didn't want to meddle, and Seth was looking at them. And then all of a sudden, well, I hear this thump, and she completely passes out. I'm like, oh boy, okay. So I get out, and he's like, call an ambulance. There's no ambulance, we don't even have cell range. There's the lodge. Get the staff. I said, okay, I think she just overheated, because they had told us that day that they had hiked this massive rim trail. So she's fit. Like, I know this woman isn't, unwell or chronically ill.
Yeah.
And she's sort of like on the ground, and I took my water bottle, and I said, hi. I got a little overly friendly. I'm like, hey, and I'm like probably beet red. I'm in my bathing suit and I'm like, I think you might have overheated. You're going to be okay, I'm pretty sure, but I'm just going to put some cold water on your feet. And she didn't know why. And I said, just let me do this. It'll help cool your blood a little bit. And I said, I think what happened is your blood pressure went up. I just got really, biological. And then the husband's like, well, my blood pressure is up right now. I'm like, I know, you're fine. And I looked at her, I said, your blood pressure went up, and I think your brain said it's too hot, and so it made you get dizzy. And that's why you blacked out. But if you just take some long, deep breaths, I said, is your heart really fast right now? She's like, like terrified. I said, it's going to change. I'm just going to give you a little more water on your feet. And I said, do you want some water? And she was afraid to touch my water bottle. And I'm like, I don't care. If you don't care, I don't care. She's like, I'll have some, because they didn't bring any water. And it changed. And then, of course, all the staff is rushing up, and their first aid attendant is there. And the guy says to me, well, that's why there's a 15-minute time limit to soaking. I'm like, dude, I didn't want to argue with him. I was like, it has nothing to do with that time limit. And I just said, she's okay. I think she's going to be fine. She just got a little too hot. And she was fine. And then the next day we saw them at dinner, and the husband was like, she's okay. I'm like, yeah, I think she just a little overdid it, and it was a bit too hot. The water was too hot. I made a point of saying that. It's like, a little healthy shame there. You should have waited for the water to not be too hot. But I just, sometimes feel for folks so they don't understand what their physiology is, what it does. You look at the only stay in for 15 minutes, drink lots of water, but you can do all that. But if you can't sense what's happening,
Yep.
you're in trouble.
Yep. It's such a simple thing.
It is.
Such a simple thing.
It is.
And culture doesn't train us to notice ourselves, to be aware of ourselves, to even practice taking it, like just checking in or scanning.
Yeah.
If it did, none of the modalities that we've learned and practiced and studied would exist.
We wouldn't need them.
Yeah, we wouldn't need them.
Exactly.
I had a moment like that. I was flying back from Oregon, and I flew through Seattle, and this was still during, what was it, 2021? So airlines were still requiring masks. I flew through Seattle. I got off the plane, had to use the bathroom. You know how your bladder just, you get off the plane and all that pressure changes. And it's like,
Exploding.
gotta go.
Uh-huh.
So I'm making my way to the bathroom, and there's a man on the ground and there's like three people around him: a Delta, a woman from Delta, and then two other people who are passing by apparently.
Mm,
And there's a little bit of wetness on the floor,
mm,
and the man is sort of out of it. And I had one of these moments of, no, I don't need to get involved. And as I was listening, they did not know what to do.
mm.
So I knelt down and I said, I'm a trauma specialist. And I just started engaging with the man.
Yeah.
Started talking to him. It turned out that he was diabetic. He'd had a beer and a burger, and his blood alcohol, not his blood alcohol, his blood spiked to,
Sugars.
yeah, sugar somewhere in the 600s, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
I asked him what his name. I don't even remember his name now, but I asked him his name. Just started interacting with him.
Mm-hmm.
Had him hold my hand. He's like, "I'm scared. I'm gonna die. I hear you. I'm right here with you. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
right here."
Yeah.
Helped him again, just orient himself to me, to the
Mm-hmm.
present. Like you, I did a little bit more of the extra social kind of engagement, a little extra ventral. And he
Mm-hmm.
was coming and going a little bit, and then he started to have more lucidity, and I just
Mm-hmm.
continued to help him be oriented. And I was with him until the paramedics arrived. And I'm certain that having the presence of another there made all the difference in the world, and it sure did for the people who were around him who didn't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. They were terrified,
Yeah.
rummaging through his bag, trying to figure out what to do, and waiting for somebody
Oh
who knows
man.
what to do to be there.
Yeah.
And it's all just simple things.
Yeah.
Just listen to my voice,
Yeah.
feel the ground.
Yeah.
I gathered a little information. Didn't tell him he was going to be okay, but just said, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And the paramedics arrived, and I could give them information about him. I could tell them his name, what he'd had that day, what was going on. Delta gave me a $250 voucher.
Ooh, you got paid.
I
That's
got
great.
paid, yeah. But these moments, like what you're describing,
Ah,
my prayer for humanity is that we understand ourselves well enough that
yeah.
anybody could do this.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't
And
have to be a person that's a specialist.
and it's not rocket science.
It's actually really simple.
It's really simple. In those situations, it's really simple. I would say, and I know you work with folks, I'm sure, with chronic syndromes and all that, and
I have, yeah.
complex trauma and abuse histories. So, yeah, sometimes when you're working with material, stored stuff, and maybe we'll talk about that a bit, then yeah, it is a bit more complex when you consider conditioning and social norms and yes, it's okay to make a sound,
Yeah.
da da da, all that stuff. But in those, it's like domestic happenings.
Yeah.
It's also basic first aid. I don't want to make an assumption, but my assumption is you've done CPR training in your days at
Yeah.
some.
Years ago now.
Me too. Yeah.
It's changed a bit, I think, since when I did it. But I have had to use it. In my late 20s, a woman OD'd. I had to save her life. I saved her life 3 times.
Shit.
Had to
Wow.
pull her tongue out and
Yeah.
administer CPR before the paramedics arrived.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Well, I think about that because I haven't redone my cert in a while. I've often thought it would actually be fun to do that now, knowing
Knowing what
what
you
I
know.
know. Whether it's maybe we should do a somatic trauma training with a CPR
That's a cool idea.
in a fun location.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
And I always go back to that because what's the first rule? People say, oh, ABCs, airway, breath. It's like, actually, the first one is assess for danger. Is it safe to enter into this situation? So, my situation, your situation, the two that you just like, that was super safe.
Yeah.
And I always say this with my students like, if your kid falls and breaks a leg on their bike, and they're in the middle of traffic, that is not the time for them to orient and chill out.
Correct. Yeah. These are things that seem as though they would be simple and basic, but aren't always when we're scared.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said, Will, about how people don't know how to just be. And this sounds terrible, but it isn't just a lack of common sense because that's too simple. It's like everything goes dark or black and you forget the basics. And it's like on traffic or in traffic, kid has a compound fracture, not the time to ask how they're feeling. You scoop them up and you get 911 or you drive to the hospital. You fix that later, the emotional stuff. But when it is safe and you've got time and it's not a life-threatening injury, so much can be done to negate the ill effects of not feeling that stuff. I mean, that's a training in itself for basic human function.
Which is such a funny thing. And I agree with every one of those words, training in basic human function, which is, it's such a funny thing that we as humans don't have that just as a natural part of our upbringing and conditioning.
Yeah.
This is a contemplation I'm in a lot. Like, why are we not playing an active role in our own evolution, our own development, our own conditioning? We're just not. We're passively riding
Yeah.
along and then
Yeah.
treating all the symptoms.
I mean, do you think it's because we've gotten so domesticated? Like, because I always think about the domestication of things, not people are all freaked out about AI and tech and industry, but I also think, well, if we were more connected,
Yeah.
we could still use that stuff and but have a very intelligent relationship with it. Have you seen the Matrix movies?
Oh yeah, I love those movies.
Have you seen the last one?
Uh huh. It's
That
been a little while, but yeah.
was 2021.
Yeah.
I find myself actually suggesting people watch that because it didn't have the same energy as the first three. And I think people maybe watched it and were like, this is kind of boring. It's not, fight 'em up scenes in the air with all the wire work. And, Keanu's a lot older, all these things. What I took from that, and my husband and I have really dissected it, is there's a lot, and I'd love to hear your pieces on it, but this connection between machine and human. And I spoiler alert, everyone, I see that scene where Neo comes into their world and he sees all the vegetation growing. And the little machine comes up and he freaks out. And the woman, the matriarch, who I think is Jada Pinkett Smith. It's
Is it?
Jada Pinkett Smith, that Will Smith's wife.
It's been so long since I've seen that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, you might be right though.
she's like, it's okay. We're
Integrated.
friends now. Whereas the first three Matrixes were all about, well, more than just this, but the fight between machine and human.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one part that I thought was clever.
I have lots of thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to where you were beginning with this around
Yeah.
domestication.
Yes.
I don't think we have anything to fear with technology when we're connected to the natural world.
Yeah.
But I do believe our process of domestication is flawed and happening without our involvement or any engineering. Engineering is probably the wrong word, but participation, maybe we could say.
Right.
In schools, traditional education in North America at least, but I think beyond as well, when children are tested, you may actually have heard this stat before, when children are tested on a scale for like aptitude or genius, it's something like 90% of children test in the genius category in first grade. But by seventh or eighth grade or by high school, it's maybe 3 to 5% that test in that category. That to me says an awful lot about how we're conditioning the mind and the body of an individual, where we're conditioning out of them abstract thinking, problem solving, connection to the natural world, playfulness, creativity, and all those things. And if we know that that's happening, a logical solution, and this is just applying logic, would be to nurture those things. Waldorf education does that a little bit at least. But I think there's an opportunity for that, because then as humans on the whole, we would be more connected to our natural world. Now, coming back to the Matrix, I
Yeah.
think I think the Matrix does a really good job of taking on this argument about these things.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about it, I actually was wondering, have you watched Westworld?
No, I've watched West Wing, but not
Yeah.
Westworld.
So
I'm
there's a
writing
book.
it down.
There's a book that was written in I want to say it was the '80s by a person named Julian Jaynes called the Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. I
Okay.
accidentally stumbled on this book when I started watching the show Westworld because in the first season, Anthony Hopkins is in the first season. They're taking on this concept of consciousness, and they start talking about the bicameral mind, and I'm like, what the heck is the bicameral mind?
Can you
So
say that slowly? By chem.
bicameral, like a bidirectional camera.
Ah, okay.
So this it was a book that was turned into a series that HBO took on, and then there was a big break because production was stopped during COVID,
Right.
but then it was resumed. It starts out, and I'll just give you the premise. There's an adventure park where you can go and have real experiences, any experience that you want, where it's Western themed. You can
I
go
see.
into this environment, you pay a whole bunch of money, and there are these cyborgs that or machines that look like humans. And you can have any fantasy experience that you want. You can chase down
Right.
people, you can shoot them, you can kill them, you can have sex, whatever you want. Pleasure, gambling, it doesn't matter because they're rebuilt very quickly. But the show very quickly starts taking on this premise of where like how does consciousness form?
Yeah.
So I started reading this book, excuse me, listening to it. I never actually finished it. But listening to the first couple chapters alongside the first couple episodes, they almost run in sync as the ideas are unfolding.
Uh-huh.
So Julian James was references a lot of different research around the brain and how and these ideas of consciousness. What happens when the corpus callosum is severed? How do the individuals respond to the world? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Westworld then evolves into taking on this the ideas and the concepts of AI and humans living together. So there's this large scale AI technology that can see everything and predict behavior because it's connected to everybody's everything. I think there's a lot of violence in the first couple
Sure.
seasons. But I think that you watching
I
that,
would I
we're
probably really like it.
we're gonna have a lot to talk about probably.
Okay, okay. That's my how many seasons is that? Do you know?
I think it's four now,
Okay.
and the latter seasons are in more of a technology heavy environment, and it gets really really interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I've seen clips of that because when you mentioned Anthony Hopkins, I remember seeing his face as an obviously he's older than when he was in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's Anthony Hopkins doing something new. So I have seen clips of it. That, I mean, gosh, where do we go from here? That makes me think of Minority Report.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, I mean, one of my favorite series is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which,
Oh yeah.
if you haven't watched that, that
I
is a
haven't.
commitment.
Yeah, I've watched some, but I definitely haven't fully committed to it.
You gotta commit, and you gotta commit almost like it's an anthropological, sociological dig because it's Marvel, so it's got the, Avengers, but it's about, I can't, it's a lot, but the first couple seasons make it look like just kind of a superhero show, but the arcs go into parallel reality, cyborgs, AI, time travel, other dimensions, demons.
Ooh, I think I would actually really like that. I just need to get through the first season or two,
Yeah.
where it starts to get juicy. That
Yeah.
reminds me of an old show, Fringe. Did you ever watch Fringe?
No. Oh, here we are. We're just going to talk about shows now. I love it.
I think you and I also have a shared reality around enjoying.
Oh yeah.
TV and or movies as a means of like showcasing different things. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that I've learned, and it was actually my husband who got me more into watching a regular show most nights,
Hmm.
because that's his non-negotiable. Like after we have dinner, he's in his man cave watching a show, drinking some tea, having some tobacco, maybe a little
Hmm.
whiskey, maybe,
Hmm.
and at first I was like, I want to hang out and watch a movie. And now I'm like, I kind of like this solo time where I'm just like immersed in my own thing and I can laugh and stop and get up and move and don't have to worry about another person.
Hmm.
But what I've started to really love with some of these long form shows, so I will have to look at Westworld and Fringe, is you really see the art of character development
Yeah.
and you go, wow, these writers are pretty brilliant. Very different than like I will not watch reality TV or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm currently watching The Bear,
Ooh, I haven't seen that.
and that is about restaurant industry,
Mm.
and it is intense. But again, it shows the trauma. It shows the intergenerational trauma, the drive to always have stress and anxiety,
Yeah.
the addiction. Babies are born in it, businesses are built, there's
Hmm.
a suicide, like all these things that are just
Yeah.
real. So it's a fun one that I'm doing. We started to watch it years ago, but Seth was like, this is too stressful for me to watch right now. I'm
Hmm.
going to throw out one more and then let's maybe get back to some of those other topics. Dollhouse.
Ooh, I haven't seen that.
Dollhouse is less known and it's from the same creator as Buffy, the
Okay.
Vampire Slayer, which I have not watched, but apparently it's fantastic.
Mm.
And it's about, this is going to sound really gruesome, but it's like high level prostitution.
Uh-huh.
And you basically can buy a doll or hire a doll for your life, for a date, for a fantasy, but it's not always sexual.
Yep. Yep.
And they wipe the mind of these dolls, but it's super somatic. I'll give a little spoiler in that one of the key dolls is hired to be the mother of a newborn baby because the mom, I think, was killed.
Mm.
And so the husband didn't want to be alone, didn't want to grieve.
Hmm.
So this also goes into our culture. Didn't want to grieve the loss of his wife, so he goes, because he's got money, and hires a doll to be the mother. But what ends up happening is this doll, who should be blank in her mind, starts remembering her own life.
Mm.
And then when they try to take her out, because of her somatic chemical oxytocin, like she even started breastfeeding, even though she hadn't given birth to this baby. And so she had this bond. And then when they tried to take her out, she went ballistic and crazy because she's like, that's my baby. Like, you
Hmm.
can't take me away from my baby. And they had to like do an intervention, like military style, to get her out. But it showed so brilliantly that mother child bond when it's there,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't mess with that. And so they pick these little things that are very human and showcase why we shouldn't play with these things. I mean, again, it's a lesson and don't try to play God and work with people's brains to the point of erasing them because they will somatically remember.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Dollhouse. It took me a bit. It's very 90s.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's got like kind of a, I don't know, the moment you watch the first episode, you'll go, okay, this is kind of cheesy.
That's how Fringe is.
And
It's
then
a
you,
similar time frame.
okay, cool. And then you get into it and you can't stop watching because you want to see the
Yeah.
evolution of these dolls.
Hmm.
And then it gets a little apocalyptic at the end in a good way.
Nice.
So,
I'm already sold. The and that idea of the somatic imprint is
yeah.
woven throughout Westworld too.
Okay.
Because these bots, I don't know, cyborgs, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it,
Yeah.
start remembering the lives that they had been living. and having these memories just sort of surface
Yeah.
while they're in play.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these ideas of how we had this implicit knowing about things seem to just kind of show up all over the place, which is such an interesting projected thing where we find them in stories, we find them in other places, but it's not woven into the fabric of our culture in a way where we can say, my body remembers things that I can't
Yeah.
even bring up
Yeah.
cognitively. But man, those imprints are there.
They're strong. I'm going to change topics.
Awesome.
I'm going to go more interview-ish to you. How did you get into this work?
Oh, that's a great question. I have been fascinated with human nature for as long as I can remember. Cultural anthropology probably would have been a direction that I would have taken if I had taken to academia. Academia and I just didn't get along, and I think a lot of that has to do with some trauma that I experienced in my teenage years. But I've been diligently teaching myself about culture and psychology and all sorts of other facets of human nature for a very long time. And I was working in the music industry. Well,
Oh,
music industry, theater and art.
yeah.
I did sound engineering for almost 10 years. And then that transitioned into me being able to work with a theater, some part-time as a stagehand. And during one of the productions of an opera, the technical director fell in love with my work ethic and with my ability to really quickly problem solve things.
Yeah.
So he brought me into a summer stock position at a place called Castleton, Virginia, with a conductor named Lauren Mazel. Lauren Mazel was a child prodigy virtuoso, and he wrote his first, I think, symphony at 7 or 8 years old. I don't know. He was a brilliant, brilliant human, very well known. And I may be off about the exact details there, but it was an early prodigy and virtuoso. And so people came from all over the world to do this summer stock position where you lived on site for about 2 to 3 months, and then they produced these huge grand opera things in this massive tent outside. Tent, it was more like an inflatable, massive room and production space.
Yeah.
So I went up there and I helped to build all the sets, and then I helped to run the stage production, and then I also helped to manage the symphony. And then from there, I ended up stage managing some symphonies and do an assistant technical director role. All of this to say, I was in this role
Yeah.
in this phase of my life, and it was a lot of hard physical labor
Yeah.
and long hours, and I didn't quite make enough. And I wasn't really satisfied because I wasn't using my mind the way I really wanted to. Prior to that, I worked as a bouncer for almost 5 years. They called me the gentle giant, and usually it was just talking people out of conflict.
Yeah, totally.
But everybody would come and talk to me about their problems, and I would,
Oh,
in a way, just sort of support them and listen and practice empathy skills. And I knew I wanted to pursue a direction in life like that, but again, so much friction with traditional academic path. And it's not that I have any negative judgments about academia, because I definitely don't. I think there are a lot of brilliant people who learn a lot of incredible things by taking the traditional path. It just, for the way my brain organized, it created a lot of friction for me. But if I was interested in something, I could very much self-study and self-learn these things. So I met some teachers who taught astrology, depth psychology, and hypnosis. My mother, at this point, became a psychotherapist. Later in my life, she became a psychotherapist, and so she met these people, and she paid for me to have a retreat with them. So I flew down to Florida, and I spent a couple days with them in this immersive capacity, and we were doing life review, hypnotic regression, and they were using the astrological chart almost as an inquiry tool, instead of using it to do any sort of like prediction about you.
Yeah.
This woman's name was Linda Brady, and she was avidly against predictive astrology. She had been involved in it for years, but avidly against it by the time I met her. Instead, she used it as a tool in the way that Jung might have used inquiry. and she just looked at placements of things to ask questions. So she taught me the symbology of these things. So I'm there and I'm immersed and I'm learning, and I'm like, I feel like I'm living the Celestine prophecy right now.
Sorry to interrupt, but how old were you then,
Let's see, I would have been
roughly?
28, 29,
Okay.
something like that.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
right before my Saturn return.
Okay.
So we're having this wonderful experience. I'm going through my life and processing various different things and learning about astrology at the exact same time and hypnosis. And I just said to them, and I've always sort of been this way. I said, "How can I learn from you more?" And they're like, "Well, you're in the 3-year training program." I'm like, "I am, but I want to come live with you. What about an apprenticeship?
Yeah.
You ever done
Yeah.
something like this?" And I'm not thinking about what's involved in that for them. I'm just blazingly
Yeah.
full steam ahead. They said, "No, I don't think we can do that. That it just you couldn't afford it, and it would be too much." They had a small cabin in northern Vermont, a ski town called Jay, Vermont.
Yeah.
It's about 6 miles from the border of Canada and off of Vermont. Well, the next morning, it was time for me to leave. We were going to do a little bit more stuff, and then I was going to fly out later in that day. And Linda said to me, "We've talked about it. And if somebody else from your cohort is willing to come, we'll do a 30-day immersion where we'll teach you the whole 3 years in 30 days."
Holy.
Yeah. And I said, "Okay." So I sent a text message immediately, and one of the other women in our cohort actually said yes, but with the caveat she needed to bring her 15-year-old son along. I said, "Okay." So it was a 2-bedroom cabin. She and her son were in one bedroom. I stayed in the loft, which wasn't really a room. It wasn't
It's no
closed.
privacy. Yeah.
Yeah, I hung a blanket to
Yeah.
create some privacy for
I can
myself.
see it now.
hmm And every day consisted of starting about 8 o'clock in the morning and going from about 8 o'clock in the morning to about 5 p.m. in the evening when she would start to see clients. And then we would sort of audit, listening to her do the work with her clients. She got permission from a number of her clients, and she'd be on speakerphone, and we'd just listen to her do the session work. And then the evening would end with us practicing various forms of hypnosis.
Mm.
We did dream analysis, we did depth psychology work, we did hypnotic induction and past life regression work. And then we learned the details of everything that she did with karmic astrology. So how to work a chart, and it was like learning another language. It ended up being 40 days where we lived there with her. And from
Wow.
there, I saw her working, and she was getting paid about $120 an hour over the phone. And this would have been 2012, 20, no, 20, this was 2014.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's more than I'm making.
I was going to say that's pretty good for that
That time,
time.
yeah. hmm
Hmm.
And so I wanted to learn, and so that was it. I started seeing clients immediately that year, and I found that I had a real strong knack for it. I could like really quickly pick up on things,
Hmm.
especially the hypnosis. And I even did my first couples work. I was a little underqualified for doing the couples work that I was doing, but I knew some basic frameworks, and
Yep.
kind of blunder our way through in the beginning. you
I've
know?
done that. It was scary.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. My mother at the time brought me in to work with some of her clients to do some hypnosis work
Yeah.
with some of the clients that she worked with. So I
Yeah.
got some experience with some more complicated cases and got to learn how she thinks about work as a therapist, which is helpful. And then I
Hmm.
went and got a traditional coaching training so that I had some credentialing for working with
Hmm.
people. And that really just head over heels into doing this work. Some of my first clients were therapists and coaches, which is such an interesting, I mean, it's like a precursor to what I do nowadays, where I'm consulting with a
Yeah.
lot of people like
Yeah.
that. But then I decided I was going to go, I had an opportunity that just happened on me to go to live in Peru. So I took it was about 10 months, and I lived in Peru, and Amazonian shamanism, ayahuasca work. And I had discovered Levine's work right before I left. I audited
Hmm.
one of the self-study with Hoskinson teaching one of the videos with my mother. I think it was beginning 2, I think it was. She
I
was
was in
watching
that
it.
class, by
Were
the
you?
way. That one recording of Hoskinson, is it in a small room with like, you
I think
probably
it
would
was
have
a
seen that.
smaller room. Yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting right behind because it was Joshua Silve who was
Ah,
recording that.
how about that?
So that's so interesting. There's a point in that where I like ask a question and someone's like, "Was that you, Irene?" I'm like, "I think so."
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Peter was still more involved back then,
Yes.
and the flavor of what was being taught was very different. And I knew instantly that that was my next path.
Yeah.
And I just dove headlong into the SE work, and I took to it instantly. I think some of that's the hypnosis background, the studying of depth psychology, and I understood principles of Gestalt work. I could see some of the stuff that Levine was doing when I was watching him. Of course, I didn't understand the depth of it by
Yeah.
any means, but I could see some of the influences, and that gave me a name or a label for the thing that I'd been studying all along. And I learned as much as I could about that field as a result of my exposure to that. And instantly, I was like, "This is the science of shamanism.
Yes.
Everything's explained so beautifully. All of the ancient traditions on our planet understood this implicitly, but we didn't understand the biophysiology, like the mechanism. We couldn't describe it in the way we can today. We had different words for it." And as soon as I got that, I'm like, "This is the holy grail. This is the secret sauce." Was kind of the thing that happened inside me. And immediately it changed everything about what I was doing with people. I could, I knew how to adjust my pacing. I knew how to go deep. I was comfortable with people having reactions, emoting, expressing, modulating, all of that. It changed the trajectory, and it gave me again, it gave me a name of a field to start researching and studying, and that was the
Yeah.
thing that I had been missing, kind of piecemealing things together.
It's incredible how parallel our stories are. Like spooky.
Ooh,
Yeah. Just to mention the science of shamanism, I remember so when my husband Seth got into the SE work, it was after we had met, and that's a whole other story that actually connects
was he
to.
first? Did he get into the world first?
No, no, I started my SE training in '09,
Amazing.
and I can cover that detail in a moment, but '09, and then I met him in 2010 on the tail end of finishing advanced. And there's a whole story there. We'll park it for now. So we met, fell in love. He's American, so I met him in Oregon, and he moved up to Canada. And then one thing led to another, and he's like, "I want to learn this." He was in food service forever, but so interesting. My husband is a composer by trade and a sound engineer,
How about that?
and he wanted to go into theater, but he didn't, and he still loves it. But when he finished his composition degree out of Spokane, Washington, he was, at the time he didn't know it, but he had complex PTSD. And he's like, "There's no absolute way in hell I'm going to New York or LA to be a composer, because it would be for television or movies or jingles." And so he hightailed it to the Big Island and was a hippie for like 2 years and practiced meditation and earth medicine and, all the things. Had a son, met his first wife. So that's another story. But then we met and he got interested in the work because I was telling him about it when we met at this hot springs resort. And he just was like, "This is really interesting." So a year and a half fast forward, we're married. He's living in Canada. He does the SE training. And then a few years after that, I was assisting at the Eye of the Needle workshop in, I'm going to remember in a second, the Best Western in outside of Mill Valley. I always forget, Corte Madera, where they do a lot of the trainings. And that was the third Eye of the Needle I had attended. I had attended one as a demo, which blew my system out of the water way too soon for me. Then I attended it as as a student a year later, and then I was assisting. And one night or one day, Seth looked at me. He said, "This is just soul regression work."
I said the same freaking thing.
He said that. He said, "This is soul retrieval,
I
soul
said the same
regression,
thing to
soul
people.
retrieval." Sorry,
Yeah.
retrieval. That's what I should have said. But no one knows it, and he's not saying that. And
I actually
so,
have heard an interview, or I heard a dialogue with him where he
did you?
said this,
Okay,
or some version of it, or maybe I overlaid my own, because
maybe
studying shamanism, it is the retrieval of the
soul.
moment when we fragment, when something awful happens, we're regaining it.
It's
And
coming,
it's,
and
yeah,
absolutely. And the word that he would always use in Eye of the Needle, and for those, again, if this is going live, Eye of the Needle means it's working with near death, surgical states, anesthesia states. It's sort of Peter's bread and butter, if you will. I really hope he writes a book on this before he
so too.
passes. Please do that. But this work is often not talked about. It's not really promoted in the basic SE training from what I knew back in the day as something that was very important. And I would say most people need some version of this, but he always would use the word in that workshop, tether. You know how we might say, feel your feet, get grounded, orient. It was always tether. And that was very specific to the soul fracturing and you leaving your body in that near death or in that anesthesia or surgical state, because you do leave your body. I've had many anesthesias, and it is the weirdest feeling when
Yeah,
you
same.
come back and when you leave. You can't stop it.
Yep.
And so that tethering I thought was just so brilliant. But yeah, I'll never forget Seth said that. And when you mentioned a second ago, Will, the science of shamanism, and you can't treat this model, in my opinion, as a clinical practice of steps that you do. And when I was assisting years later in beginning and intermediate trainings, this is what would happen. You get a cohort and they'd do their first 4 days, right? Lovely teaching. And this is, by the way, no hit to the teachers or Peter or anything. This is just something that I don't think has been properly produced, manufactured in a way that makes sure that people get what's happening. But people would learn the basics of titration, orienting, pendulation. They'd go back to their practices. Typically, it would be psychotherapists, social workers, again, not a problem. Then people would come back maybe 4 months later, 3 months later, and then there'd be a check-in on day one of the second segment of beginning one. And you could tell who got it and who didn't by the way their questions were. And the question of a person who didn't get it would say, yeah, I've just been trying to implement some of these tools into my practice, but I just can't figure out a good time to do it. And because I can be pretty obtuse, but I can be very diplomatic too. And I was like sitting there going in my mind, oh man, you missed it. You should have been practicing this the moment you got in your car on the first day of the training. But again, we could say, Will, that the way in which the trainings, the curriculum has been offered to people, it is not bringing in that. And I don't like the term mind body anymore. It's not potent enough. It's not bringing in the integrative aspect of the self and the environment as a holographic whole. And if that can't get portrayed on day one, I think, and I'm, a stinker for ensuring my students get it, and I drill it and drill it and drill it in a kind way, but direct, you have to get this holographic whole. Otherwise, you will sit there in your office and you will feel like you're separate from the process of what's happening. And then you're applying ideas and tricks like you're doing a teeth cleaning.
I mean, what you just said there is so important. We are in participation with a process because we
Yeah.
are process.
Yeah.
We are a living process. I love the holographic whole. I like to say we are living process. That's what soma means. We are a living process. I go back to Hannah's definition of it. I love his. Soma is the living process. We recognize that we are an organism that lives in interactive state with ourselves and the world around us and each other. And if we try to take that out of the equation, then, like you said, we're dissociated from it, trying to apply some sort of trick or
Yeah.
framework or thing, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's not it. We got to participate. Any therapeutic process is successful because of the participation that we have within it, and that means we got to really be connected to ourselves.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So, yeah, that's how my brain would think. And it actually is why despite the fact that, you didn't get paid as an assistant and nothing was offered to you in compensation except for doing sessions and killing yourself, doing extra work to make some money, I had to step away because it was actually becoming sad is almost the word. It wasn't disappointing. I can't be disappointed at something that wasn't my creation, but it was sad to see all these eager students and therapists. And even once, one of the coordinators of the trainings I was assisting said, "Yeah, she said, people come here because they just want that badge on their website to say that they have SE."
Yeah.
And in the last 7 years, well, it's more like the last 5 years, now that things have gotten really established online, and I, as someone who does online work and put it out there in the first place for trauma healing back in 2012, 14-ish, like I'm all for online, but then it's like some things should not be done online.
100% agree. The formatting and the structure is formatted and structured for an in-person event.
Yes.
When we take that to an online experience, we have to take into consideration that it just doesn't function the same way.
No.
And we really need support and learning in a different way. There's no continuity between the modules. And online, we kind of need that continuity. And we need the practice. We need the ongoing building of the skill.
Yeah.
The assumption I'm imagining from the way that it was done was these people are going to go out into the world and they're going to do it. But again, training systems that emerged out of the 70s were a very different structure of training systems because time was different, commitment level was different, immersive nature of experiences was different. Like when SE began, before it was called SE, everybody came together.
Yeah.
It was this immersive experience, you're learning. It was like that with Feldenkrais work too. I don't know how you did your training. I don't know when you did yours, but and the guy that I worked with here when I first got to experience Feldenkrais work blew me away. And he said that he immersed himself. It was a 3-month or a 4-month long training process. And it was immersive the whole way through.
May I ask who it was that you worked with?
His name, there are two gentlemen that I've had the pleasure of getting to know. One is Larry Goldfarb. He's out in California, and I just love him. He's such a character.
Larry's sweet to me. We know each other well.
I'm so glad
Back when
to
I
hear
was
that.
back when I was more immersed. The first time I met Larry, I was on a bus. See if I can remember. I think it was at a conference in Purdue. That's Indiana, right?
Yeah, Lafayette.
In Lafayette. And I was there. I was really young in my training. I think it was like 2000, end of 2004 or '05. It was the summer. And we were on a bus, and I don't know how we knew. I think you could just tell this person is not like a Midwestern person. He is not Midwestern, right?
No, it's definitely not.
And Larry's, yeah. lovely and colored and gay and just like so happy. And he's like
Hmm.
grandpa, right?
Yeah.
And he looked at me. He's like, "You're one of Jeff Haller's students, aren't you?" I was like, he didn't even say Feldenkrais. He knew who I was training with. And I went, "Damn, you're good." And I was so, I mean, I was so young, then this
Hmm.
was ages ago, over
Hmm.
20 years ago now.
Hmm.
And that training, I mean, that conference was so great because I was just seeing the immensity of just people so interested in this one thing.
Hmm.
Sadly, it's declined,
Yeah,
you
I know.
know. But there was this one image I remember, Will, where we're doing this massive awareness through movement lesson, which is the group form of the work, in this beautiful old auditorium, like with light and wood and only what you would have, an old America kind of thing. And you might not know this, but there's a classic lesson from Feldenkrais called 4 Points Personal. Four
Hmm.
Points Personal. And it is highly structural and it teaches you what real core support is from the skeleton. And the end, though, is going from these 4 points, two hands on the ground, 2 feet, and you're sweeping the long leg through, but
Uh-huh.
then you're rolling back and up, and then you jump over, and then you go to the other side. It's very physical.
Hmm.
And the trainer who was teaching, he's from Canada, French. I can't remember his name. He led this. And at one point, I looked around as I was doing this, and he had an auditorium of like 150 people in unison doing 4 points personal.
Incredible.
And I'm like, man, this is so cool. So that was my first exposure to a Feldenkrais conference.
Wow.
But yeah, I did my training in '04 to '07
Hmm.
with Jeff Haller. He's still practicing and alive.
Hmm.
And our training was about 800 hours, I think, over 4 years.
Hmm.
And it was in 3 segments and a minimum of 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And then the summer segments were 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had multiple teachers. This was the other thing. It wasn't just one teacher.
Yep.
And and I'll give the Feldenkrais of America, the guild, this. They make it such that you have to have a minimum of X amount of hours from other trainers.
Hmm.
And so, you start to see what you like, what you don't like.
Hmm.
You
That's
get,
right.
these sorts of things.
Hmm.
But what I did, similar to you, is when I finished, I kept mentoring and I attended kind of part time the next training that he did. And then I went down to the States at the time. Jeff was in Bend, Oregon,
Hmm.
and I sat in on another training. But bless you, Jeff, he let me sit in his office and he would ask permission from his clients. And I watched him do functional integration lessons morning to night.
Oh my
And then
God.
we went out for dinner. We went out and had beers. Sometimes I would stay at his house with his kids, and we would talk.
That's the true nature of mentorship.
I could cry thinking about
Oh,
that time because
yeah.
you can't teach that in a 8 week or 12 week online intensive.
No. There's no
And
way for us to get that kind of real learning unless we're in it.
you have to be in it and for weeks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you said you went to that little cabin in Vermont for 30 days and it ended up being 40 days, I'd like to believe, I hope that there are those out there who want that level of training.
Yeah.
But when I see this come to my inbox or my DMs, and I'm sure you've seen this,
Mhm.
when the first question is, how long will it take me to get trained? I stay diplomatic, but this is for anyone who's listening to this who may have asked me that. The first thing I say in my mind is, then you shouldn't be doing this.
It's like the question, how long should I meditate?
Yeah.
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
I've got about 15 minutes. You should probably meditate for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to always be longer than
Yeah.
if we're in a hurry to get somewhere,
Yeah.
we've already missed the point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I know. Having an experience like that, though, oof. Yeah, so Larry's friends with a man named Pat Siebert. I think Pat's now in his 80s.
Okay.
And that's how I met Larry, was through Pat. And I saw Pat 2 times a week for about 2 hours each time for
Wow.
almost a year.
Wow.
And it changed my body.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah, it will.
had hammer toe and
Yeah.
it would just go away.
Yeah.
It would come back a little, then it would go away.
Yeah.
And I started kind of, I'm in Austin, so I'm exposed to the biohacking community. So I started sort of stacking experiences.
Yeah.
So I'd go see Pat, and then I'd go immediately to a float center, and I'd do a
Smart.
90-minute float. And he
Hmm.
did this one session with me. I don't know if he was in an altered state, but I definitely was in an altered state where he had my body moving in ways I've never moved,
Hmm.
and just fluidly moving in these ways I'd never moved. It was like I
Hmm.
was going back through early development.
Hmm.
And then I went into this float tank right afterwards and continued exploring the movements.
Hmm.
And something changed in
Yeah.
me after that.
Yeah.
And I knew I still haven't done the training, but I really, really, really would love to. Larry's another person that I have this kind of same like instant spark with that I do with you. We will sit on the phone sometimes and we'll talk for 2 or 3 hours.
Oh,
And there's something about, I don't know if it's a wisdom or a spark or a soul level something, but you've got it, he's got it, and there are a couple of other people I've met where I'm like, in my daydream, we all are working together on
heck
helping
yeah.
humanity in some way. Now we're doing it
Yeah.
individually, but
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
dream, there's a place like Esalen used to be for practitioners.
Yeah. Yeah. Larry definitely, I mean, I haven't seen him in years, but there's a twinkle in his eyes that is constantly, caring is too light of a word.
Yeah, yeah.
You asked a little while ago what the trainings, Feldenkrais trainings used to be like. So back in the day, right? Like he would have trained when Jeff did at Amherst, Massachusetts in the early 80s. And there's actually a classic, if anyone just Googles Amherst, Massachusetts Feldenkrais, you'll see a gymnasium with hundreds of people wearing, short shorts and, barely any clothes because it was hot, but that's
Yep.
also the way it was back then. Just lying on a ground with no mats, no props,
Yep.
as Jeff would say, no camping gear around them. It's just you on the ground listening.
Yeah.
And they were there for like 2 months.
Yep.
And I know the first training was in San Francisco. Well, the first American training was in San Francisco in 1977.
I believe Kellerman was involved in bringing him here, if I'm remembering correctly, at least based on what he wrote.
It's I don't know that history, but I would, if you've seen that, then that's probably true.
Kellerman and Thomas Hanna, from what I
Yeah.
understand, were heavily involved in helping Feldenkrais to bring the trainings to the United States, from
Yeah.
what I understand. And I think some of that had to do with Kellerman and David Badella being real close, and Badella
Okay.
was building his own thing that I just learned about from Raja called biosynthesis therapy.
I've
I'd
never
never
heard of
heard of
that.
it. Never heard of it. Even just looking at the beginning of the book, I'll send you a link to the book that I recommend. It's one of his more well known book. I
Okay.
think it's just called Biosynthesis. Anyway, I'm taking us on a little journey
It's
here into
fine.
history land, but I'm fascinated with that because the developing of this, there was this emergent quality to humanity at that time,
Hmm.
especially in North America, where people were seeking a better understanding of themselves, some sort of connection to the natural world. There was this, a movement towards this. And as a result of that, there were these immersive experiences and experiential learning.
You're reminding me of something that Steve Hoskinson said in one of our trainings. It's so long ago that I might have some of this wrong, but he said something along the lines of the reason why so many people got into psychedelics and meditation and Eastern healing arts in the 60s and 70s, around that time,
Hmm.
is because the boomers that were having those babies were some of the first people ish who experienced the medicalization of birth being drugged, numbed, anesthetized.
Ooh, I like that perspective. Yeah.
And so babies came out, they survived, obviously, but they didn't have that euphoric, yummy skin on skin contact that we're seeing
Oh, that's right.
happening now.
Yeah, the Ferber method, leave them alone to cry it out, the boom of avoidant attachment.
And even like crib, you're in your prison, you know, bars,
Yeah,
baby food,
yeah,
you know, like feed your baby food and you don't have to do this. You can have your smoke and martini, you know, and all these things, and nothing against tobacco and martinis, but that part, it's like you got away from that deep connection to that little human. And so then these babies are then a bit more independent, becoming autonomous in their teenage years, you know, early 20s. And heck, like, give me something to make me feel euphoric
yeah.
because I've never felt that before. That
Something to
was
help me feel alive.
exactly. And that was, you know, that was Steve's speculation to some of the reasons behind that. And I often wonder, you know, if he heard that from someone else or if that was his own, you know, musing, which very well it could have been because he's very contemplative.
I think there's another factor too that I have contemplated about this. It was the widest our middle class had been in the United
Ah,
States, at
true.
least. And being that the middle class was so wide, there was more safety and security. And of course, there was a lot of turmoil going on, but there was, I think, at
Sure.
home a little bit more safety and security. Which the my idea of that is, or my speculation is that that provides an opportunity for us to start asking questions. Then the
Yeah.
boom of psychedelics makes LSD is going to have you asking questions too. I discovered LSD very young. I was 16 years old, and that I think influenced significantly my ability to be sensitive to my body.
Right.
You know, yeah, just extreme amounts. Like Ram Dass tells his stories, and I go, yeah, that's familiar. That's familiar. I went off the deep end trying to feel alive, and then realized that wasn't actually the way to.
In.
Yeah, it wasn't. It gave me a like a little shortcut to give me the illusion of the experience of connectedness and aliveness, but actually, I needed to do the deeper work to really be able to access that on my own.
Oh, I had my stint with acid too. You
Hmm.
know, it was high school,
Yeah.
early 20s.
Hmm.
Mom and dad, if you're listening to this, yep. I survived. But it was never, it was always a fun experience, and then it came with a crash,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
as it does, right? When you're coming
Hmm.
down from these things, you know, we always were safe, but we had a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm kind of in a world right now where I'm looking at the psychedelic world from a therapeutic state and going, I get it. I see the benefit. Like, I don't know if we need that right now. Maybe we do. It reminds me, like, so I'm in Canada, in British Columbia, and you know, years ago they legalized marijuana. I remember thinking, as someone who once was a pot smoker, can't touch the stuff anymore at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
thinking this is not good.
Mm.
And the reason why I thought that was when I traveled in Europe quite a bit in my early 20s. I spent about 6 months traveling through with a first boyfriend, and we spent 4 weeks in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
And I remember feeling the energy at that time, this would have been 1997,
Hmm.
how responsible people were in the streets, in the cafes. Like, you didn't see people just smoking pot everywhere outside of, you know, Safeway.
Yeah.
It was very respected.
Hmm.
And then when it came here and was legal, it was, I don't even know what the word would be, but it was excessive. It was everywhere. You smelled
Yeah.
it everywhere.
Yeah.
You
Kind
can't
of like
go to
alcohol.
a, yeah. And I mean, I'll give people this. They don't walk, typically people don't walk down the streets here drinking a beer.
Right. Yeah.
but they do walk down the street smoking a doobie,
It's
you
such an
know.
interesting thing that how the brain of an individual or the personality just doesn't equate. It especially, I mean, as a former pot smoker, and
Yeah,
it was excessive for me for many years.
me too. Yep.
I understand their mind frame. It's this doesn't matter. It's not hurting me. It's not going to hurt anyone. Everyone should enjoy this. It's
Mm-hmm.
just feeling so good.
Mm-hmm.
But that we miss the point. It actually is more of a dissociative than anything, and it disconnects us from our sense of feeling and our ability to attune to each other and feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the same way that alcohol, well, in a different way, but it's a similar way to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God it doesn't affect the cingulate the way that that alcohol does, but still, you know,
It's
we're
different.
yeah,
I
we're
mean,
not in connection.
I had to leave the town I lived in for 13 years because it was so clear that most of the clients I was seeing, this is when I was in Feldenkrais practice,
Hmm.
and this wasn't everyone, but a good portion were so committed to their marijuana in the evenings typically and during their day that it was really tough to do any Feldenkrais work or any SE work because there was a frozenness to the
Yeah.
system, and it was tough because I was in an environment with adrenaline junkies. I was one. I was
Hmm.
in the mountaineering community,
Mm.
and that was used to skin up a very large peak.
Yeah.
That was used at the end of the day to bring yourself down. And I remember sitting in my studio one day with someone who is high known in the community where I worked in, and she wouldn't cry.
Mm.
Like I could see the
Yeah.
tears. Like I could feel, I think I was probably crying.
Yeah.
Horrific back pain.
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow, this person is not gonna let up.
Yeah.
And I found out not recently after that, because this would have been in 2011, that she's alive, but she got a significant form of cancer
Oh.
and healed, thank
Hmm.
goodness.
Yeah.
But everything's fine. I mean, it goes back to Gabor Mate's thesis of when the body says no, and
Hmm.
and that connects. And I looked around, I'm like, I can't make a living in this ski town. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons to leave, even though I miss it
Hmm.
dearly because it's
Yeah.
gorgeous living in a mountain town.
Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons I left Charlottesville, Virginia, which is a mountain
Mm,
town on the East Coast, and I miss the land. I miss being able to be out in nature or to be hiking every weekend or even in an evening if I wanted to
yeah,
after seeing clients. But the economy there, the culture there, more than the economy, doesn't it doesn't support the kind of the kind of thing that we do in the same way that other
yeah,
culture does.
yeah.
Hmm.
What brought you to Austin?
You know, I met some people online, and they were moving to
Yeah.
Austin. They his birthday is in December. His wife flew me in because he and I had been meeting online once a week, just dreaming into creating together. Flew me in for his birthday. They were facilitating psychedelics at the time, so I was sort of an additional support person for a
Mm-hmm.
small group of entrepreneurs. And I just instantly fell in love with the people that I was meeting, the culture of entrepreneurship, and the excitement around self development and health and wellness. And there's an energy of movement here, and there's also well, it is a very strong entrepreneurial spirit, I guess we could
Mm-hmm.
say.
Yeah.
Uh, and I love that. And then there's still some traditional values that exist in this state, which I also like.
Yes. Yep.
And so we get the blending of these two worlds that have sort of converged here. And I knew immediately, he's like, dude, your clients are here. Because I was working with everybody online at that point.
Mm.
And yep, I think so. I think so. And so it was like less than 6 months later, I moved. And well, no, it was actually almost exactly 6 months later I moved. It took a
Okay.
lot of convincing to convince my fiance at the time. She just really did not want to leave Charlottesville.
Uh,
She's from Bend, and
oh,
she lives there now.
great.
hmm But at the time, I just knew it. I knew it in my bones. I'm like, we gotta go here. Don't know why. Don't know what's gonna happen, but gotta go here. And being here and meeting the people that we've met has been good. It's been very good.
Cool.
I miss the land. I miss
Yeah.
forests, and I miss
Yeah.
lush vegetation.
Yeah.
But I can travel to see some of that.
Definitely. I've got some students down there, so I'll have to make sure that
Ah,
they know of you.
yeah.
Yeah, good, open, young,
Mm,
upcoming
amazing.
folks that I think will hopefully be doing more of this work too. So,
Oh, that's good to hear.
yeah, I'm always on the lookout for young people. It's like, is anyone
Mhm.
out there in their like early 30s?
Yep.
Nothing, no, sorry, to those in their 50s because I'm at that age now or 40s, but it's like there's also something too about the time. That's why I asked how old you were when you started that
Mm.
mentorship. It does take time,
A lot of time, a lot more than
a
we
lot of
anticipate.
a lot of time, and also a lot of personal work. And so when you mentioned how much Feldenkrais you were doing, I get it. That was the level I was doing. It was the level of SC sessions and touch sessions I was
Yeah.
getting, body work.
I did that with Rolfing too.
Yes.
And I got to work. So I'm really grateful to have been able to work with people who learned from the originator. Pat
Yep.
traveled around and followed Moshe
Yeah.
for a while. He
Yeah.
also traveled around and followed Marshall Rosenberg for a while. And so he blended in his own linguistic, nonviolent communication style with the body,
Yeah.
which was a really cool experience to have with him. I've never had it with anybody else. But then a woman named Norma Bandy, who lives here, she studied directly with Ida. And getting a Rolfing session from her, there's just something about that. She's like 4'9", 4'10", something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
And I'm 6'4".
Oh,
And so
you're a
you
tall guy.
imagine
Yeah.
she's just gets in there, and
Yeah.
again with my body changing in ways that are phenomenal. And she's done SE, and she assists with Raja with the ISP stuff that he does too.
Yeah.
And I think she's done the eye needle stuff too, and a whole lot of other things. You wouldn't know it because she's not assertive or with like sharing about what she
Yeah.
does. But my goodness, she's a master at her craft.
Yeah.
And that was another thing where I'm like, okay, how much time do I have left in my life? Because I really want to go do an immersive study in these things. Um, there's just there's a sweetness there. And then there's also a real strong impulse in me to, at some point, I know it's not now, probably in the next 10 years, to begin to form another model that is a synthesis. And I think we are, those of us in our generation, and, I say our generation, and you and I are, what are we,
I'm
five,
51 this year.
so 6 years apart.
Hmm.
I still think I consider us close enough,
Yeah.
but it's time for us to start doing what they were doing, to,
And
to
yep.
synthesize.
Yep.
And you're already doing that, and I'm already doing that, but I see the potential for, there needs to be a movement of some kind where that synthesis begins to form our generation's version of the model, whatever it is. Another thought that I've had as I've been studying the history of these people and the lineages that have formed these things is that each of the models or the techniques that have changed the way we practice certain techniques
Hmm.
have emerged out of a certain context and culture.
Yep.
Like, we think about Freud. Well, who was Freud working with? People around the wars that were highly traumatized,
Hmm.
extreme cases. And then
Hmm.
Reich was working with extreme cases. And the culture around that time was dictating what Reich was seeing.
Yeah.
Now, it led to a lot of really interesting discoveries about the human body, about emotion, about the tissues, and that informed a lot of other things. But each of these emerges out of a time. And SE emerged out of a time when we didn't have as much technology that was booming. So there was a real essence to how Levine synthesized a lot of these other things that's important for us. But then we're in a time now where we need to apply the principles in a different way. The principles remain, and in each of these that I've studied of the somatic teachers, from all the different lineage, the people in the lineages, they all have the same principle.
Yeah.
It's inner self-sensing. It's connecting with that process, engaging with it, biasing the body's intelligence over the mind's interpretation, process, recognition of the necessity for pacing, capacity building, resilience, but whatever we want to say it is. Like all of these were techniques to do that. They're just different techniques.
They're different now. I'm not as well studied with Reich's work. I know it through Peter and him working with tissue in trainings, tissue meaning muscle and armoring and body armoring and all that. And I'll share a story, but then I'd love to get just a definition, if you will, for my kind of indulgence, but also for if people are watching this. But I remember being in a master class with Peter in New York, I think, at the Garrison Institute, and it was on sexual trauma. I think it was the only time he did that workshop. Maybe he did another one. It was a master class. Another one of those ones where it's like, wow, this should be part of the basic SE training.
Oh my
It's
God, so
not.
much this should be.
Oh my God. so, so again, we'll put that to the side. But he was on the stage with a woman. I don't even think it was a demo. I think it was someone from the class, and he was sitting at the top of her head. She's on a massage table, and he had her do very Feldenkraisian movements. I would call it connecting the head and the pelvis, where you're just rolling through the whole spine. You're feeling the feet, to find that grounding. And I remember because I was in the back. It's kind of like a church setup. Have you ever been to Garrison?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's literally a church setup. You're sitting in pews and he's on the stage.
I love that.
And yeah, it's a huge place. And he's like kind of rocking her very gently. And I could see people like this, like, what is he doing? Because he's just going in it. And I was like, oh boy, okay. And then he started to like get into the trap muscles and into the masseter muscles and into the scalenes, and then he had her like vooing and eyeing, and then it was just like this, I think what I'm talking about. Nothing too crazy for me in practice,
Yeah.
but what was, and then of course she felt wonderful and felt expansions to the diaphragm and the spine and all those things. So then we had to go and do a triad, which made no sense to me because none of us had. I'm just going to pause at the ridiculousness of this.
Here, go try it. Good luck.
Have fun.
Have fun.
And so we have no massage tables. Most of the people there are not trained in Feldenkrais or bodywork or massage. They're psychotherapists. And I'm like little old Irene with these three almost, again, it felt like people were just like, what just happened? And I don't say this to shit on anyone. It's just like, the concept wasn't thought out. Maybe we should talk about what just happened. And I don't even remember what I did well with the people, but I just remember that moment in time, looking on stage and going, that needs to be taught in a titrated flip chart. These are the traps.
Yep. This is the procedure. This is why we're doing this. This
Yeah.
is what's happening.
Yes.
This is what this stage, this is what I'm thinking when I'm doing this thing here. I know it's intuitive, but it's not. It's also very calculated because
Yeah.
he understood implicitly what was going
Yeah.
on.
Oh, and I just remembered something. So after that day, I don't know if I'm supposed to be sharing this, but we're in the assistants meeting afterwards in a little room. And one of the assistants had a question, and rightfully so, this person should have had a question because they didn't really know what was going on. So Peter was demonstrating it on one of the assistants, and he was sitting there and, hands on the shoulder girdle, and, he's trying to find his words. And he's like, it's just like you're just, and he couldn't find the word. And I just said, skeleton. And he went, yeah. And I think that was maybe the first time he really acknowledged me. I was like, oh, I'm like, he goes, yeah, that's the skeleton. Because everyone's like, are you in the muscle? It's like, of course you are in the muscle. You're on the skin.
Hmm.
But this is where the Feldenkrais piece comes in.
Yeah.
You do need to learn about the skeleton and its structure. And I'll never forget Steve Hoskinson, again, who's SE trained and sort of Peter's prodigy, say to me, Feldenkrais and SE, they're just like this.
Yeah.
There's so much connection. And if you have both, man, you have a winning combo. And I really watched my colleagues who were Feldenkrais trained go into the SE trainings. And not that we didn't not, we didn't know everything, but we understood implicitly a level of body awareness
Yeah.
and structure and physiology that we didn't have to worry about what's he doing up there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So that's just a fun little story that I'll never forget.
I love it. I love it. Well, and I think that there was a lot more of that happening back then.
Yeah.
So much more of it. There wasn't so much fear around hands-on
Yes.
work. There's so much of that nowadays.
Can I touch you? May I touch you?
Right?
Like
I,
just,
I've stopped even using the T word, touch word. I just say
yeah.
make contact with your
Con-
body now,
Smart.
because
The
it ends up
T
being a
word.
trigger now. Right? And that just shows where we are as a culture at the moment,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And nonetheless, we do need physical touch. We need
Yeah.
to have another human with us, working
Yeah.
with rhythm, right? With the
Yeah.
tissue. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, yes. I haven't done a Feldenkrais training or a Rolf training, and I really want to because I haven't had the deeper structural training.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it's intuitive, and I've learned from a bone setter and an acupuncturist quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yep.
just mentored me a bit on certain things, and
Cool.
it just intuitively I know how to work and move into the body, but I don't offer any body work services because I'm not qualified for that at the
Yeah.
moment. But I think it's important because if we can recognize where tissue density changes or where there's laxity, then we know where there's not enough signaling. We
Yeah.
know something's happening there. And I
Uh-huh.
think from everything I've read about Reich, and I haven't done an exhaustive deep dive on Reich's methods,
Yeah. Tell me
but
what you know.
But what I've learned is he discovered areas in the body which he called diaphragms. Now the Chinese have figured this out 3,000 years ago or something like that. And
Yeah.
so the Taoists, there are diaphragms. They call them diaphragms. They're cavities, and they are in
Mm-hmm.
various different places in our body. Well, emotional experience tends to cause our body to contract. Well, we tend to, let me say this differently. We tend to contract in certain areas of our body around emotional experience to inhibit it.
Mm-hmm.
That then forms repetitive patterns which can change structure. And Kurtz did a really good job of taking Reich's character analysis and then translating into something that's a little bit softer, and that turned into Hakomi.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Pat Ogden did a good job of translating that into sensory motor psychotherapy. But again, we're just seeing offshoots of the same understanding developed
Exactly.
further and synthesized more. And Lowen's work with bioenergetics focused more on the catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
And Reich was a bit focused on catharsis in the beginning, but his wife's daughter, I want to say it is, created something called gentle bioenergetics, which
Okay.
is actually very interesting. It's still being taught, but it is descended from Reich's work. But it's more like the SE approach.
Interesting.
It's gently working with the body.
Yeah.
It's more relational. But Reich saw a correlation between emotional inhibition or emotional processing and healing or resolution of physical symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
He used a lot of breath. He used a lot of breathing to engage the diaphragm. And he believed that
Mm-hmm.
if the body had enough energy, it would have enough capacity to tolerate the intensity that was necessary to process through some of what was stored or
Yeah.
bound or some of the contraction patterns,
Yep.
however we want to say it. That, I think, then informed all other forms of body psychotherapy. I see him as really the precursor to a lot of things. But at that time, he was seen as a heretic.
Of
He was
course.
labeled as a devil worshiper and a heretic, and then eventually imprisoned, and a bunch of his work was destroyed. It's just really sad.
Oh man.
But there is a form to a lot of that, and Alexander Lowen carried that forward with a lot of his bioenergetic work. So there's a lot of like changing the shape of the body where you're like leaning back,
Yeah.
doing a thing he called the bow, which was really just engaging the center of your body and doing lots of heavy breathing, which then fills the body with energy. And then they would do ha expressions,
Yeah.
and they'd
Yeah.
do like, hitting the
Movement.
pillows and stuff like that. I mean, that can be useful sometimes, but I think that ended up leading people to the wrong assumption,
Yes.
which is that we need catharsis to feel better. And Levine wrote about this in the end of In an Unspoken Voice, I think it was. He was talking about his work at Esalen. You know,
Yeah. I
the people that,
can't name it, but yes, definitely.
yeah. Well, nonetheless, I think it's interesting because it shows us the progression of discovery. And we have really people in incredibly suffering states. Well, or maybe I could use grammar better. They're
I
suffering
think
in really terrible ways.
that covers it. People are not well.
No, they aren't.
And I think when it comes, like you said about the breath, it's great, but if you have collapsed spinal muscles and no fullness in the perineum and you don't even feel comfortable passing gas, I like to go really crude, you
No,
know,
you're right.
how the heck are you going to birth a baby for a female, for
Yeah.
example? And, it comes back to this rebuilding. It's like a zhuzhing up of the
Yeah.
somatic qualities and the energy and the fluids and the fascia,
Yeah.
and not one thing will do it all,
Yeah. That's
as we know,
exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. We need a mix of a mixed model, so to speak. We need a mix of
Yeah,
skills that we can pull from to work.
yeah,
My intercostals have had to learn how to relax. I had too many
sure.
falls when I was a teenager, where it
Me
knocked the wind
too.
out of me and was knocked out unconscious. And
Yeah,
they still forget sometimes and get tight.
yeah.
And I have to remind my body, oh, that's right, it's safe to breathe. So again, breath work, if I'm more like huge breathing, wasn't effective. But
I'm similar. I have concussions, whiplashes from figure skating and skiing. I
yeah,
still get weekly Rolfing and massage work done
yeah,
despite my years and decades of work. God damn it, those scalenes don't know how to chill out.
right,
And then I've got this mouse thing here, that like
yeah,
just reinforces all that pattern up into the jaw. And
right.
so I get this beautiful work done, and then I come back to my little computer, and no matter how aware I am and how many salt baths I have, I'm not supposed to be at this thing, even though it's so lovely to be at this thing, right? Back to that domestication conundrum we started with.
Yeah. It really is a conundrum, though. I mean, the domestication process, like the nature of the way we live our lives, unfortunately lends itself to our bodies taking certain shapes. And
Yes.
those shapes are really, they make a lot of sense for what we do repetitively. And so there's not like a perfectly healed person when we're having to be in these shapes every day. If we get out of them for prolonged periods of time, our body organizes in a totally new way. And that's the cool thing about the body. I think it would be good for us as humans to be able to have like to evolve past certain necessities in our domestication process. I really do. I was having a thought a minute ago, and it felt important. It'll come back.
I'll come back. I want to come back to, because when we originally booked this meet and greet, we call it that, it was about the future of somatic trainings,
Yeah.
new traumatology. Here's how I see this stuff, and then I get obsessed with thinking about this, and then I stop myself and go, just go make dinner. Like,
I can relate to that exact experience.
do I want to die on this, cross trying to, it can't be done in a pushed fashion, but there also has to be a little bit of healthy sympathetic to figure out if there is potential for a new evolution.
Yeah.
And I shared this with you in text. I'm going to share it for the record. Jerry Karzin, who was Moshe Feldenkrais's assistant for quite a while, and I really should interview him. He was my trainer for 8 weeks of my training. He's still alive on Maui, I believe. And he said to me one day when I was producing the baby live clip that a lot of people know of. That was when I was young and perky and like, let's do a documentary to make sure everyone in the world knows Feldenkrais is so amazing. And the video did really well, but I couldn't get any support to further that mission, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I've cried about that. But he said to me one day, he said, Irene, you just have to wait for all of us old farts to die. And once that happens, you and your generation can do something with this work. And he said that with full sincerity in his very Brooklyn, just old man accent. And okay, Jerry, it'd be interesting to ask him what his feelings are on that now. But as you said a moment ago, you named off all these Kurtz, Ogden, Lowen, obviously all the other people, Reich, Freud, Jung, Levine, Hoskinson, Kane, all the people that we would consider mentors and our elders.
Yeah.
Gosh, such great work. And if we think of how the trainings were 10, 12, 15 years ago, there was an energy. If we think of the trainings in the 80s with Feldenkrais, there was an energy. Esalen, there was an energy.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, what should the new energy be? Because it cannot just be entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. We need to make money. We need rent, food, retirement savings. Like we need that stuff.
Yep.
But then I've looked at my predecessors. They were just struggling to not be put in prison because the Reichs of the world were put in prison.
Right.
Edgar Cayce was put in prison for practicing medicine without a license back in the day. So we're not going to get put in prison, which is cool, as long as we're, not doing anything illegal. But there's like this, I always liken it to medicine. I use surgery. So I'll bear with me with this example.
My mind was going to the exact same place, so please continue.
Because people say, oh, Irene, doctors are practicing bad. I'm like, whatever. Put pharmaceuticals aside for mental health and taking people's gallbladders out when they shouldn't be. Like, I get that. I know that's happening.
Yeah.
If we think of just orthopedics, broken bone, or plastics, burn victim, needs grafts, very important medicine. That medicine didn't just happen in 10 years or even 100 years. I've been studying the history of medicine, back to the 1600s when the first actual hospital was amassed in France. And before that, the Greeks and the Persians and were practicing all these things. And so that's a long time. And
if you can hold your thread, I have
Yeah.
a guide. Have you seen the movie The Physician
no,
with Sir Ben Kingsley?
no.
It connects to this thread. You can keep
Beautiful.
going on the thread.
I'll
but-
love that. Okay, physician. So I kind of look at this and I go, the only, this is gospel according to Irene. For me, my brain is like the only way we can actually do what Jerry Karzin has said, which is wait for everyone to die so we can create this new thing. We have to go back to that energy of when surgery and orthopedics and bone setting was so new, and it wasn't about competition. It was about amassing ideas and techniques, and this works, this doesn't work. And then everybody agreeing, this doesn't work. And right now, there's this fighting of, no, I can't believe you're saying Trey isn't good. It helped me. I'm like, I'm not saying it didn't help you. But what if we could get to an organic trauma release without that? And I feel, Will, that unless we can actually agree on some core things, it's going to be very hard to create something that is non-entrepreneurial, so that we actually create a school where there's common ground. Because you don't go to medical school now to learn orthopedics, and you don't have the students saying, actually, I don't think that is how you should do that, because It's like, no, this is established. This is how we do anesthetic. This is how we prep the patient. This is how we do an incision. This is how we strap a person down so they don't wake up. Like, all that stuff has been figured out, and it's not a question. And right now, there's like this fighting of my way is better, but there are some ways that actually are better. And then there's some ways that aren't. And then there's some ways, maybe someone will get an epidural for that knee surgery, and maybe someone will choose anesthesia.
Yeah.
And that is a choice, right? So that's what I think about. And then I say, okay, I got to go make dinner because you can't solve all these problems in one afternoon. But that is,
I
for
like the
me,
direction now.
I'll stop in a second. One last thought on that. For me, I kind of look at my life, like if the next 10 years are to be focused on something, it would be to see if there is a way to create that next version in the new traumatology, somatic, neuroplastic world of healing that is the equivalent of orthopedic surgery.
You're just speaking to my heart right now. I remember, it's been more than 10 years, it's maybe 15 years ago, I was having a thought about this. No, it was more than 15. I was daydreaming into this, and I wrote a little thing on a document in an old version of Microsoft Word, and I still have it somewhere on my computer, I think.
Fun.
Yeah. But the imagination I was having was, how do we do this? It's more of the question, right? Well, if we look at how medicine evolved, and I'm just, because I'm in the States, I'm thinking about it here. Medicine evolved because a couple of wealthy people decided that they were going to fund this is how we do it, essentially. And there was probably an economic reason to do that. It made sense. And I believe it was, what is his name? I was going to say Rothschilds, but I don't think it was the Rothschilds. It was, he owned a bunch of railroads. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it was, but it was funded by a couple of wealthy people.
Yeah.
And then that made it possible to establish what is now the American Medical
Medical
Association.
Association. Yeah. The AMA.
The AMA, yeah. With that came, a rejection of a lot of traditional approaches that were still good. Herbalism, various different alternative,
Yes.
what are now called alternative therapies, but are actually very wise and historically accurate. But it formed something. And in order to make the change that you are talking about, and the same one that I'm really wanting to see, I think, this is gospel according to Will now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there has to be a marketing campaign that's strong enough that people will get on board with it. And there has to be enough money to shut the doors to other things. And say there has to be a pushing away from certain things and saying, we've identified that these are things that are effective. Unfortunately, there's not been enough research in the field of somatic therapies. Some of that's because it isn't identical for each person.
No.
We need a person that's smart enough that can say, well, it's not identical, but we have an outcome that occurs. And the outcome occurs differently because of the difference of the organism. The uniqueness of the body that's in front of us. But we have procedures we can use that are going to effectively get an outcome. It's just the outcome might be a little bit different depending on the individual, and how do we create correlations there? Well, we really need time to observe and study and blend things together. One way of doing that would be to have enough money or a backer of some kind that was wanting to see that vision come to fruition. Another way would be to engineer a form of marketing campaign that is significant enough that it hits the masses. Mate's documentary did that during COVID. The Biology of Trauma, whatever it was. The one that came out.
I don't remember, but yes.
There were 700 and some million people that watched it during the first weekend that it was released, or something like that.
Huh.
It boomed at the right time. I forget how to pronounce the names of the people who produced that documentary, but something like that works as a thing that sends it out into the masses, and I think that has something to do with why Gabor's work is become so popularized, because he's seen in a documentary, he's seen presenting his ideas, and then it goes global, and enough people see it that they start to take on and adopt the idea. In the same way politicians succeed, or large organizations and corporations succeed in convincing us that what they have to offer, their product or their service or their idea, is the thing that we need, we can do the same thing with what we have to offer the world. It would just require a coordinated effort from a lot of people
Yeah.
who are willing to collaborate on a direction. At least that's the thought that I have about it. And then building of an organization.
Yeah.
Now, the building of an organization could also involve building an NGO or a nonprofit where we seek out funding from tons of wealthy individuals who believe in the vision of that. And that's the thing I've contemplated as well. In fact, I've written out a whole vision for how I would imagine it
Okay.
working. That maybe I tell you that story another time.
Yeah. I've talked about the documentary thing with some friends. Actually, my video editor who edits my stuff is a documentarian and does impact-based films and such.
Oh, cool.
And we talk about this all the time because, and even the woman who produced Baby Live is a very well-known Canadian filmmaker and documentarian. And what we always come back to is it isn't enough to have a documentary that shows a bunch of people healing, or they were here
Yeah.
and then they healed and then they're better. That's lovely. And it shows an individual's journey. But there's something, and we don't even know what it is. There's something, I like to look at our work like an equation or an algorithm. From high level math that I did once upon a time, is like all the variables change, but the equation and the formula is there.
That's it. Yes.
And that's the part that gets us into trouble with the offshoots and the methods. The product, the equals, what comes after the equals, is the health, is the vitality, or maybe it's just the person doesn't have diarrhea anymore or migraine
Right.
headaches,
Right.
or maybe mothers are birthing babies more healthy and easier, which I've seen in my students and I keep seeing, which is super exciting. But like that equation, the variables shift, but the equation is there.
Yeah.
And the question is, what is that equation? And can we agree upon that equation? And I don't know, because I've watched the drama, say, in the back end of the Feldenkrais guilds and trying to figure out what Feldenkrais is. And I've heard through the grapevine, through people I know, none of the trainers can agree on what Feldenkrais is.
Yeah.
No one can agree on it, even though it can heal stroke, help back pain, cerebral palsy, performance, musical endeavors, what I've experienced, what you've experienced.
Yeah.
So that to me is like, I look at that, I'm like, that is the question to figure out, because you have to have some people who are willing to be okay not always being right,
Yeah.
but you're all interested in the product.
If we all came together for a question, seeking a question instead of seeking the answer, that would help us to not be in such disagreement together. Like, we just need to know what question to ask. So if we all go seeking the right question, like, what's the question? We need to seek the question together. We think we know what the problem is, but we don't actually know. We need to be asking questions instead of saying, I've defined that the problem is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think underneath everything, and I think you and I are kind of pointing at the same thing using slightly different words, but there is a universal principle. It is that human beings have an organic nature to them.
Yes.
And that is universal to us as humans. And if we can return to this universality of our organismic process, then the principle applies to every human. It's just how we use our interventions might need to be different depending on culture, body shape, history, and so on and so forth. But the principle of what we're doing what we're doing can apply to any
It's
approach.
absolute.
It is exactly. It's
Yeah.
absolute. So it's a universal principle for us as humans. And if
Like
we could be,
gravity.
yeah, exactly. And if we could be
Even though
teaching
some
that,
say gravity doesn't exist. I've recently heard that, but again,
we still have
if I
people that
drop
believe the
this
Earth
pen,
is
it's
flat.
it's gonna drop down, and you're gonna
Yes.
hear it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm being
Yeah.
fun, making fun there.
Hmm.
Principles,
Hmm.
absolutes. Seek the question, not the answer.
And that connects us.
Yeah.
It connects us, I think, to the thing beneath the
Yeah.
thing. It's like, well, no, my way is getting there. Well, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, not opposed to your way getting there. And also, are we applying the principle? Are we understanding that the body needs the right amount of pacing and the right amount of like,
This and that.
this and that? And great, if we understand that, practice medicine, practice rolfing, practice body work, you know, do whatever, practice psychotherapy. But the body still remains the constant in every one of these equations.
Absolutely. Well, did we save the world?
Not yet, but maybe we're starting to ask the questions together.
That's the other thing that my lovely mentor Jeff said to me at one point. He said, "Oh, Irene, you got to stop thinking that you can save the world because it'll make you miserable."
I've been
I
told the
under
same thing.
I understand that a bit more now. 20 years out from my Feldenkrais training. Anything else?
I had a float session,
Yes.
and in that float session, I had a moment of, I don't know, lucidity or clarity, or some people call them downloads, which I actually hate,
Yeah.
an inspired thought.
Yeah.
And I came out of that float session. I said, you know what? My mission in life is to end trauma for humanity. I said, "Oh my God, I sound grandiose. I sound like there might be something wrong with me." And the small voice inside said, "Don't say that publicly. Don't say that out loud to other people. They're going to think that you're just crazy, that you're having grandiosity." I said, "No, no, no. I really do believe that I could make that my life mission. That my purpose for being alive is to help humanity with this problem. I know that I will never, ever achieve that. I know that it's an impossible task. And because I know that it's an impossible task, I work differently towards it.
Yeah.
But I might accomplish more if I set myself towards that task than I would if I didn't." And so, to your, like, I want to echo your save humanity. It's like, well, yeah, humanity is really struggling. And I believe that what we call trauma, and I'm just using this word in the new way that we understand it through Levine's model, but it's the inhibition of the flow of life. It's flexibility. It's an absence of flexibility.
Helplessness.
Helplessness. It's an absence of
Yeah.
resilience, right? If we could restore that for humanity in the various different cultures of our world, humanity will live differently, and our connectedness with the planet would be different. Our kindness towards each other would be different. Would pain and suffering go away? No. But would it reduce a bit? Yeah, it would. But we got to work together.
Yeah.
There's no other option there.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And
happen.
and working together doesn't mean we're always agreeing.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what I've seen in our predecessors and mentors, and not always, but I think this is where, from a meta level, Levine's work and those that have gone deeper into some of the early trauma and transgenerational pieces, which I've been lucky to study. How do I say this? The spokespeople, and you and I would be those spokespeople, let's just say, have to have their shit together and have to know how to self reflect.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, when stress is happening, when there's disagreement, when that funder backs out, or when something happens in that future school, there has to be a coming back to ground.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is people split.
Yep.
And I don't mean the person, I mean literally like they go in different directions.
Hmm.
And that is what occurred from what I know from the Feldenkrais world is when Moshe died, rather than those few that really got trained. I think there was like
Hmm.
13 maybe that were anointed as trainers,
Hmm.
rather than this, like you and I are doing, but they didn't have the context for how to do that because the trauma language and the survival physiology story wasn't there.
Right.
So that's not their fault.
Yeah.
But rather than collaborating, they went and tried to, let's do my own enterprise in Australia, the
Hmm.
States, Europe, those some state in Israel.
Hmm. Same thing happened with Hakomi. I spoke to a
Really?
person who was involved really early with Hakomi. Actually, I did some session work with him. He's just such a sweet, sweet, incredible man.
Hmm.
And he was telling me that's exactly what happened when Ron died. It split, and there
Yeah.
are actually two Hakomi organizations. And the people who were the anointed, and it was around 13 or 14 or 16 people, something like that. It was in the
Very
teens.
apostle-like. Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Hmm.
And he was like a guru. They lived on land together in the
Yeah.
East Coast, and then they moved down to Mexico, and they were developing this while living together. Very much like it was the time of cults
Yep.
and communes. But anyway,
Yeah.
they also fractured,
Yeah.
and they became trainers of regions, but then started their own entrepreneurial enterprises, and wanted to be a name that stands out on their own and independent, right? And then the organization itself couldn't agree on certain things, so they have two organizations, which is confusing for
Yeah.
really confusing. And some of that
Yeah.
had to do with Ron taking a different approach later in life,
Yeah.
right? And so again, it's the same kind of thing you're describing with the Feldenkrais work, where we have this fracturing when the charismatic leader goes, instead of having a coming together and saying, well, how do we preserve this
Hmm.
and bring our differences as necessary, like warming friction that
Hmm.
can help us to grow.
Hmm.
And
I
when we
always,
can't and we have trouble,
yeah.
like, can we help ourselves to
Yeah.
get through that conflict?
Yeah. And not tantrum or shut down and flee.
And if we do, have a group that holds us to a higher standard where we support each other to come back
Hmm.
together if possible,
Hmm.
right? You know, because that can also often be absent. Like, I'm not going to effort that. Let them go and do their
Yeah,
own
figure it
thing.
out.
Yeah, it's like, gosh, man, we're really missing out.
Yep. Yeah, I keep having this visual and I'll share it. It comes back to that medicine thing. Just for people to understand where Will and I are at right now is like, again, not studied medicine. I thought I would, but I decided not to. But if I think about when I was in the version of pre-med, I did 4 years of exercise science. It's not behind me, it's in another room. I had this textbook it's called Textbook of Medical Physiology. Guyton is the editor.
Mm.
And I sometimes just pull that out and feel how heavy it is. And I flip through it and it's thin, like Bible like paper.
Yeah.
And you look at all the editors that contributed to this textbook of medical physiology that I'm going to assume every single medical school uses.
Hmm.
I just hats off to those who can get their shit together to edit together a textbook of that immensity.
Hmm.
And I was just talking to a SE colleague of mine who's in the European zones, and he was like, "Gosh, they haven't even." And he's assisted at trainings and organized trainings, and he's like, "The manual hasn't been updated in SE since he did his training in 2007."
I know. I know.
And I will say, well, I never actually read the manual. I read Peter's books, and it
Hmm.
just was natural for me. And I preferred Rob Scare's books and that kind of thing. But
They
I'm like,
recently updated some of it, from what
did
I
they?
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. It had been a
Yeah,
long time. It was still the old ones when I went through.
sure. And again, I get it. Money is tight, resources are low, you need a writing staff. But when there isn't case studies and research
Hmm.
and documentation happening in different parts of the globe where everyone's pooling that information together, you will be hard pressed to create some kind of manual or textbook.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'd love to like ask, the founders of that textbook, like, how did this start? Like, whose idea was, like, how did this happen?
There's got to be a process for that at this point. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure Dan Siegel tells a story about this when it came to him creating his own model. He had a group of, I don't know, 20 or so people, and nobody could agree. And he tells the story as, the first thing we had to do is come to an agreement about what consciousness is and what the brain is and what it does and how it does it. And he couldn't get to his interpersonal neurobiology unless they had an agreed upon definition to begin with. And he said
Yeah.
it took a really long time for them to get to that agreed upon definition. But again, we have somebody that's willing to spend time in the friction to get there. And that's essential, I believe. We have to be able to do that. I mean, we see it even with polyvagal theory nowadays, with people just having a really hard time with Grossman's interpretation of things, and it's such a small thing, but it becomes amplified with social media and everybody having an opinion now. When in fact,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't
apply.
negate anything. Yeah, it doesn't negate
It,
anything.
and it doesn't apply to the clinical application of it
Correct.
at
And
all.
Grossman says it.
Yeah.
He even says it doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's funny.
Yeah. He said the therapeutic application's great. He's arguing the physical tissues of the body.
Yeah. And wasn't it the instrumentation of how to
Could have been that too. I didn't read the full thing.
I think it had to do with how to measure respiratory sinus arrhythmia.
There you go.
It was something like that. Porges actually does a great job at the end of Chris Williamson's podcast that came out a week ago. And he gives his take in real time, obviously recorded, when he's asked, talk about the critiques of the polyvagal theory. And Porges does a wonderful job kind of getting his feathers up and saying what he has probably said over and over again on interviews and phone calls. And so that's a good resource if people want to go and listen from the man himself.
That is, I completely forgot to watch that before we got together, but we had such a good time with
We
everything
don't need
else.
to talk about it. Not an issue. I want to read something, and I'm gonna see if this book is here.
Okay.
It is. Just a sec. This is Moshe Feldenkrais's book, The Case of Nora. Have you come across this?
I haven't actually. I'll have to
Okay.
buy that. I have a lot of his other books, but I don't have that one.
It's probably the shortest read and easiest read. It's called The Case of Nora, Body Awareness as Healing Therapy. It's the only case study he ever wrote.
Really? Oh, man.
Really.
Interesting.
And this was, because I always read this to my students, my training students, copyright 77. Basically, quick one, Nora came to his office, 60, had a stroke, couldn't speak, could hardly walk, couldn't figure out how to put her shoes on. She couldn't see left from right. Like, it was a very severe stroke. He worked with her a lot over the course of maybe a year or so and completely healed.
Yeah.
And the preface is something that always stays with me. So I'm going to read it. Story time. So he says, the case of Nora is the first of a series. Of course, he never wrote more. The first of a series of stories out of my practice. Each one describes a part of my work with people. I use two techniques. One is nonverbal manipulation of an individual called functional integration. That's what you would have worked with Larry and such with. The other, used in large groups of all ages, is verbal and is called awareness through movement. Both techniques enlarge awareness of self and thereby lead to a better lifestyle. They teach I can't speak.
Methodological?
Thank you. They teach that. They teach ways of using our faculties that many of us stumble into by chance It is these faculties that make us tick. This story in the book was told to an audience. The working theory is somewhere between intuition and future scientific gospel. The working theory is somewhere between intuition and working and future scientific gospel. I remember when I read that, I probably had shivers.
Yeah.
I think about that one sentence all the time.
Yeah.
And I know from hearing from people, like Moshe was mad at the end of his life. Like he was frustrated that people weren't getting
Yeah.
what he was trying to do. Like there's footage of him at Amherst like screaming at people.
I don't blame him. I
So,
don't blame him. You know, people, I think, misunderstand what he meant by awareness, too. I think people often assume that awareness is conscious awareness, and that's one dimension of awareness. But the other dimension of awareness is neurological. It's the brain-body awareness. It's the nervous system being able to communicate with the brainstem, and then therefore the lobes of the brain, so that we can get that connectedness through our full system, and the body can stop doing what it's forgotten that it's doing,
yep.
or start doing the thing that it knows it can. And that often, I think, is missed
Yeah.
as an understanding. We just make the assumption, oh, I just need to become conscious of the thing. No, no, no. That's a part of it, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
useful, but it's only a part. There's a quote from Moshe that I love as well, which is, health is measured by the amount of shock an individual can withstand without their normal way of life being compromised.
Very well done. Yeah, well put.
And I use that in my trainings as well to say, look, health is about flexibility. It's not an arrived state that you're in. It's a fluid state. And he points at that with that in such a beautiful way. And yeah, I think that we're heading in the direction of scientific gospel, understanding implicitly the things that he really, really got. But he was so far ahead of his time that I just don't,
was.
we're not there yet.
He was, and I didn't let go of my Feldenkrais work because I immersed into SE and had to do that. Like I had to really immerse in that for 10 years, a bit more. And I do come back. I come back to those I call them Feldenkraisian principles of sensory motor awareness, the burgeoning of an action,
Yeah.
and that ability to sense how it begins in the physiology, and it has nothing to do with movement.
Yeah.
And he would say, again, this is through Jeff teaching me, Moshe would say, I could teach what I teach using high-level mathematics because it's not about the movement. It's about the processing of how we learn and how we compute things. And
Yeah.
but I use movement because it's a little more accessible
Yeah.
than differential calculus, for example.
Yep. Yep. His work is so similar to Gurdjieff.
Yes.
Like if you really read and get some of what Gurdjieff was pointing at, I often think that Gurdjieff was a huge inspiration for Moshe. Now I don't know whether that's true or not, but I read some Gurdjieff's work. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was. Jeff used to reference Gurdjieff often in our trainings.
Makes sense. That makes sense because
Yeah.
there were Gurdjieff movements. There was a
Yeah.
practice and an art and a movement practice
Yeah.
that he did, and he was very awareness focused in so many ways. But Moshe built on top of a lot of other things. There's a French hypnotist that Moshe really liked. I bought one of his books, and that was sort of the inner dialogue piece thing. I'll have to say I can't remember the name of it, but I'll send you a picture.
It's on the
of it.
tip of my brain.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
very interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's right there.
I bought an original. I found it somewhere on one of these secondhand shops or whatever, but I found an original. It was like was it the 20s or the 30s or something like that was when the author wrote it. I don't know, something like that.
Well, and the piece too with like, again, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but and I have no knowledge of Gurdjieff other than my vague episodic memory of learning about this, but it was like counting. And at one point, Jeff said to us, "What is counting? It's not counting, it's moving your awareness to the next thing. Like when you count, you do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We think it's cognitive, but it's somatic.
Yeah.
That's why we learn. You still count on your fingers, right? It's like how many, right?
Well, it's all people pointing in the same direction using different words,
Absolutely.
right? And was it Anthony? I listened to a lecture of Anthony DeMello's that I absolutely love so much. It's called Awareness, and it was turned into a book later. But I didn't like the book because it was just the direct transcript of his cadence, and his cadence is a little disjointed if you can't hear him.
Sure.
But he says, the mystic says, or the Eastern mystic will say, the mystic points at the moon and all the idiot sees is the finger. Words are the finger. We're attempting to describe something, but they are not the physical structure of the world itself. They are not reality. They are a really poor attempt at describing something that is fundamentally somatic, that is experiential. And so we have lots of people lots of approaches to attempting to define what is actually happening and what is real inside process, but we can't really. It's like Alan Watts says, we can point at a whirlpool and give it a name, but it is never the same whirlpool every single day. And that is like us. We are like whirlpools. We seem to appear the same because we're a similar shape, but we're constantly fluctuating and moving and changing. But instead we have this concept of ourselves as though we're fixed, and we're not. And I think again, all of these things are pointing in the same direction. And there's this underlying principle that I think is there that that we could all define together. And I think that could help us as humans.
Agreed. What do you think?
Well, I think I'm going to have to run in a few minutes,
Yeah,
but
we should end it.
I would continue this for another 2 hours.
2 hours and 18 minutes. Yeah.
If it wasn't for
Okay.
needing to.
Well, let's do that. Life happens. If we put this out online, which I think we will.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Hey guys, welcome to our living room. You know what we didn't do at the beginning? We didn't introduce ourselves. Do you want to introduce yourself for the camera?
Sure.
Just for fun.
Sure. So I'm Will Reason, and when I introduce myself, I like to say I'm a mystic and a philosopher before I say an educator and a somatic practitioner, because I feel so much more connected to that part of myself, the seeker, the curious, wondrous human that's asking questions about what it is to be alive. But I work at the intersection of somatics and trauma. And I teach individuals about the various interworkings of the body and the nervous system and on and on. And you and I met through social media, thankfully.
So crazy.
So glad. Yeah.
Thank you for that intro at the very end.
Yeah.
I like the way we did that backwards.
Me too.
Obviously, if this is on my channel, all of you know who I am. But yeah, Irene Lyon. And my title isn't as fun as yours, but I often say I'm a teacher. I'm an educator. It seems like whenever I'm working with people, even if it is in a more healing aspect, and again, this comes back to my Feldenkraisian background, I'm wanting them to learn through that interface, whether it's me speaking, touch, practice, so that they can go forward and have more information for themselves, so they can help themselves, heal themselves, or ask for more help, get more questions answered. And it is a pleasure to have you as a colleague.
Yes,
Fine, sir.
likewise. 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 Real good soul level resonance. I look forward to our next hangout.
And I'm going to say that maybe we should look at the books for the future for some crazy workshop
Yeah.
where we fill something like olden days,
Hmm.
80s.
I'm a huge yes to that.
All right.
Huge yes to that.
My
Let's
people
talk.
talk to your people.
Yeah, let's talk collabs for sure.
It's a pleasure.